Hello and welcome to NewsX World. I'm Joshua Barnes. Tensions are escalating once again, just hours after the ceasefire between India and Pakistan was announced. India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri has slammed Pakistan for repeatedly violating the ceasefire understanding made earlier in the evening. At an MEA press briefing, he's called this a serious breach and said the armed forces have been told to respond firmly. Meanwhile, the External Affairs Ministry is calling on Pakistan to act with seriousness and responsibility. Back in the Jammu Valley, drone sightings over Srinagar's Lal Chowk have triggered fresh alerts. A blackout has been reimposed in 10 key districts across Punjab, and an unidentified drone was shot down over Jammu. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has also held talks with China's Wang Yi, stressing that while India will fight terrorism, war is not its choice. China has called for calm and backed a return to peaceful dialogue. Of course, this situation is a fluid one. It is evolving and updates will be coming through to us. But we have the reports, we have the statements, and joining us as a first guest is Gerard Al-Fil, a Middle East expert who is joining us from Dubai. Gerard, thank you for being here with us. This, of course, a moment of optimism after this ceasefire was announced, taking effect at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time. We're now here, what are we, a few hours later, and this is what we're hearing. What's your first initial response to that?
Well, I think the diplomatic situation is now that all eyes will be on the UAE next week. We have heard from the UAE government, the Minister of Foreign Affairs Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, that he welcomes and lauded President Trump's initiative to call for the ceasefire, and that the ceasefire has taken into effect. But as you said, there's obviously still some skirmish going on. President Trump will come to the UAE, to the Gulf region next week. There will be a summit, a major GCC summit in Riyadh. Then he will travel to Doha and also to Abu Dhabi next week. So all eyes will be at the UAE, on the UAE next week. China is, you mentioned China. China is the UAE's biggest trade partner. China is Saudi Arabia's biggest trade partner. However, Indian nationals, NRIs, are the biggest expat community in the Gulf region, so everything comes here together. That is what I think will be a very interesting week coming up.
Absolutely. Also joining us is RVS Mani, a former Undersecretary at the Ministry of Home Affairs. RVS Mani, thank you ever so much for joining us. Of course, this situation is evolving, but from the report from Vikram Misri, it's clear that there have been ceasefire violations and that there will be a response. Given that optimism, given the reports that we have now received and the confirmation from the Ministry of External Affairs, what do you think is coming next?
It undermines the fact that Pakistan continues to be a rogue state. I will start with these 3 points. First, India never launched a war. It launched a war on terror, not against Pakistan. It was sheer coincidence, or it was complicity of Pakistan that they got exposed. They started, their senior army officers started standing with the terrorists. That gave out the fact that Pakistan is a terror state, and they have been hiding and they have been denying, in the state of denial so far. But the funeral part of it gave the biggest giveaway. We were going it, even after that, for an attack on terrorists, the revenge, the repudiation came from the revolt came from the Pakistani army, which is absolutely wrong. There was no necessity. If they stand steadfast with the world war on terror, they should not have revolved back. But they continue to do so. As a sequel to that, to protect the Indian people and the property, the Indians used this Akash system and turned back all the, it was 100% technical system, success. And there was no question of any, all the falsehood which is being perpetuated in the news media in several places are not really proved out. You have already spoken about on a previous occasion. We had a dialogue where the Pakistani foreign defense ministers claimed that 4 Indian jets were shot down. It was found to be based on social media reporting. No evidences, no details of the inventory number of these jets were ever given by the Pakistani media, those who were claiming that. Now we come to know that again today when the Indian rejoinder to Pakistan's continuous battering because of the high tech. See, we never targeted in civilian area. Unlike uncouth Pakistan, which is very unethical. We did not, our attempt was only to, as a defensive mechanism, and so as a counter, some counter-offensive did happen. And they were all targeted at the Air Force bases and all, just to defend our own position. Subsequent to that, they went running to the wherever it is, asked for a mediation. The Honorable President of the United States was kind enough, and other international leaders joined. They counseled both the countries. India stuck to that. But however, Pakistan is unrelenting on its own mischiefs, and they are continuing to break the norm. And it was not a ceasefire as such, as was a Trump statement is true. It was cessation of hostilities. And now, since it has already stopped, it has already broken the cessation of hostilities, India is very much entitled to go on a counter-offensive to defend its own position. Number 2, it is an act of war because as per the any terrorist attack is an act of war. If they claim it has been terrorist and it has come out from Pakistani soil, India is entitled to do a counter-offensive. And number 3, cessation of hostilities, we have been holding on, we have been morally and ethically standing by it. Physically, we have not talked to specular,
yes.
But within 3 hours of the ceasefire announced, they started attacking places in Jammu, in Katra, a very important religious shrine for the Hindus, and other Akhnur, now Punjab cities and all. So this is not, we playing fraud, it is like a childish toy by the Pakistanis. They are not serious about it. And I would now extol all the global leaders not to put their money on Pakistan. It is not only unreliable, it is an unethical country to be standing guarantee for any ceasefire or other attempt.
Yes, absolutely. I want to build on that, Gerard. I'm going to come back to you because, of course, there was an announcement earlier in the day following this ceasefire that the Pakistani airspace was opening, this coming ahead of these violations. Why do you think that move was made?
See, they have to show, they have to take some effective steps.
Sorry, I'm speaking to Gerard.
Well, Pakistan needs the open airspace, and also China needs the open airspace because most flights from the Gulf region to China go over Pakistani territory, and this disruption is something which is not, of course, can't be welcomed by China as a close ally of Pakistan. Etihad Airways in Abu Dhabi announced just a few hours earlier that they will reinstate a few flights to Pakistan tomorrow. However, there is quite some uncertainty here in the UAE, also in the whole Gulf region, which flights go, and people from Pakistan and India, but also, of course, businessmen and women who go to both countries, who have business in both countries as top trade partners, they should inform themselves which flight is going and which flight will not go. Any disruption between the Gulf region and China is, of course, when it goes over Pakistani airspace, is not good for both sides. Air travel is booming at the moment, so that closure of Pakistani airspace, but also closure of multiple Indian airports came at a quite inconvenient time.
Yes, Gerard, of course, I do want to allude as well to another MEA briefing that was made in recent days, of course, saying that commercial flights were being used as a shield after drone attacks in India. RVS Mani, I apologise for cutting you short earlier. We have, of course, had confirmation that a discussion has been had between India and China's foreign ministry. China saying, as many other countries have been saying, diplomatic resolution, de-escalation and conversation as opposed to action. What is your response, given, of course, the ties between China and Pakistan?
The global leadership they attempted to broker in a peace. They attempted to do a diplomatic initiative, which should be appreciated. We should all, China, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, United States, Donald Trump, everybody made an attempt. Now, Pakistan has failed to stand by that. So, diplomatic initiatives at the first instance have failed. What more, because I am personally for always mediations and dispute settlement and all. This is my personal expertise apart of maritime. But having said that, there is a price which the price has to be paid, and if one party does not stand by the settlement terms and conditions, then there is the parties have arrived to acknowledge the mediation process has failed. So the parties should be let go to sort out their differences by all other legitimate means. Even in this context, the entitlement of India's right to defend its people, the property and the country region, and also the ensure security and safety of the entire region is unquestionable. And if Pakistan is again provoking India, they have every right to counter-offensive on Pakistan with no hold bar. But basically, what started by India as a war on terror, it was not war with Pakistan, it was a war on terror that will continue. Whether they say Pakistan has leveraged this position to take approval for a $1 million IMF loan also. I do not know. In fact, I personally did not agree with that. But Pakistan and the IMF in their wisdom, although IMF, the agency of United Nations 1267 committee offences also include funding of terror, and this is clear funding of terror by the IMF itself through its loan.
Yes, RBS Mani, I apologise to cut you off. We do have some breaking news coming in, and this follows several reports that have been broken earlier today. There has been some confusion, but we have now some information according to the 16 Corps of the Indian Army on noticing suspicious movement near the perimeter. Alert sentry at Nagrota military station issued a challenge leading to a brief exchange of fire with the suspect. As per reports, the sentry sustained a minor injury. The search operations are now underway to track the intruder or intruders. Of course, this amidst a clear message from India at the announcement of this ceasefire that any terrorist action on India will be seen as an act of war. Gerard Alfil, coming back to you. Of course, given the situation with terrorism within Pakistan, something which has, of course, been prevalent in recent years, what's the significance of this announcement?
The situation reminds me somewhat of wars in the Middle East between the Arabs and Israelis. For example, 1956, when the Suez War broke out, when Britain and France attacked Egypt, and Israel took advantage of the situation and pressed into the Sinai and occupied the Sinai. The major powers, Soviet Union and USA at that time, USA still a superpower, of course. At that time, they put utmost pressure on Israel to pull out of Sinai. And the same is now in India and Pakistan. Both sides want to press on, and there are still incidents and skirmishes, as you mentioned, but the superpowers will not tolerate a further escalation. And also 1973 and the Yom Kippur or Ramadan War, there was a ceasefire after 2 weeks of fighting, but later the Israelis said this was just on paper. There was still skirmishes, there was still a exchange of fires, and only in 1974 there was the disengagement agreement between Syria and Israel, and this finally ended then the hostilities. So here again, the major powers, and now we have to also consider China is a major power here in the player, and as a major player, and also the military hardware had its baptism of fire in the conflict, is now a complete new figure here on the chessboard. And that is, I think, what we see now. I don't want to go too much into the details here, but I look at the bigger picture of it. China needs Pakistan for the Belt and Road Initiative, the New Silk Road. Gwadar Port, the seaport in the south of Pakistan, is an important pillar of the maritime and the economic Silk Road over land. So here the pressure is now on from major superpowers. That is a US, definitely Russia in the background. We haven't heard too much from Russia so far because of the victory celebrations in the recent days. But China, of course, is an audible superpower here in the playing field.
Yes, absolutely. If you are just joining us, to bring you up to date with what has been happening, of course, we go back to earlier this evening. A ceasefire was announced, agreed between India and Pakistan, with support from the United States, coming into force at 1700 hours. But hours later, reports of blackouts across the line of control and the international border, explosions heard, unconfirmed images and videos circulating showing what appeared to be drones. And then the Ministry of External Affairs holding a press briefing, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri confirming that there had been several violations from Pakistan following this earlier ceasefire. He said there would be a response from India. Of course, this is an evolving situation. More news is coming in. The picture will not be clear until later on. RVS, Manny, coming back to you. Of course, given the instability in the region, this moment of uncertainty remains for many across the line of control and the international border. What is the situation, do you think, in terms of moving forward now? Of course, we wait to see the bigger picture, but it is clear that the Indian Army are reacting sufficiently to these violations. If this escalates further, what's next?
If it escalates further, it is already terms of the first agreement brokered by the world global leadership, that any act of terror will be treated as a war, beginning of a war, and act of terrorism is happening at the instance of Pakistan. Because the period of 1956 and 1974, which Gerald has spoken about, that time terrorism was not a menace. But now, over the last 30 years, terrorism is finding its place. It's a new challenge, and that type of thing, whether it is the 7th October Israel, what Israel faced, or what now. And let us not make any mistake that all the people involved are all designated terrorists as per UNSCR 1267. They are all designated terrorists. Domestic designations have happened, and even the United States have designated many of the Lashkar-e-Toibas and Jamaat-ul-Dawat and all, which are involved in which on the shoulder, which the Pakistan claim as a non-state actor, but actually has the full backing of the Pakistan. So there is hardly anything to distinguish between the non-state actor claimed by Pakistan, the Lashkar-e-Toibas and the Hizbul Mujahideen, and the Pakistan state itself. So in this context, the escalation will happen unless and until the Pakistan do not rein in their own territories. They are operating from their own backyard and with the full support and collaboration with the Pakistani army. That as long as that happens, as per the ceasefire agreement, it will be an act of war, and India is entitled to up the ante, go for a full counter-offensive, and which has to be. Yes, I am for peace. Yes, I am for peace. But the person is the errant nation should first be reined in by the global government. Why not issue sanctions against these people? 1267. If Pakistan has so many people, see, Abbottabad happened. The United States, Osama bin Laden was killed by United States at Abbottabad. He was found in the Pakistani territory. But at the same time, we have been suffering this terrorism for the last 30 years. Yeah. More than 30 years. 1993 onward. United States also suffered the 1993 February attack. But still, after 9/11 only, they really took consciousness, the world took consciousness, and the entire process of terrorism happened. Counter-terrorism, war on terror happened. Now, India is also always been a very legitimate and a sincere partner of war on terror, which it is pursuing. It may look fictitious, but it is truly a war on terror by India. It has got nothing to do with nationality. If any nation supports terror, it becomes a victim of the war on terror. That's it.
Yes, RVS, Mani. I want to bring in Major General Gigi Dwivedi as we come towards the end of the hour. Of course, a global strategic defence expert. Major General Dwivedi, thank you ever so much for being here. I think a question that a lot of people are wondering, and one I hope you can go towards answering, what are Pakistan thinking?
Well, Joshua, firstly, sorry for joining late. Well, I think Pakistan is a nation which can never be trusted. And that's my experience, that we must learn from history that Pakistan has never honored any agreement. And they are the most untrustworthy people. Currently, what you are seeing, see, the ceasefire understanding were reached, but before the action could be taken, the Pakistan is already on the offensive and on the old tricks. And what I feel is that Pakistan just went in for a pause. They wanted to just recoup and recover, and also to show the world diplomatically that, well, they are offering, coming on the table for the ceasefire, but they don't actually mean anything. Because in Pakistan is only one organization that works, and that is the army. Everything happens in GHQ, that is General Headquarters. That's where General Munir actually rules the country. So there's nothing known as government. There's nothing known as the Ministry of External Affairs. It's only General Munir. And therefore, I don't think that there's any kind of corruption or any kind of communication gap between what Munir is doing and what is happening on the ground. So all I can say is, first and foremost, Pakistan is not serious about any ceasefire. They are continuing with what they have been continuing. I don't think they have got the message still, and India will have to up the ante and give them overwhelming response. Whereas as a soldier, I am not a warmonger, but I am also a very realistic person. The second point is, Pakistan is not going to change the proxy war. That is the doctrine, and they are not going to stop breeding the terrorists. Only 2 days back, their own ministers and their prime minister, they said that, look, our jihadis are in our madrasas, and they'll fight alongside the Pakistan army. So the point I'm trying to understand, Joshua, Pakistan army is no more a professional army. It's a rogue army led by a jihadi person. So they are not going to listen to any reason. And I think we would be very naive if we go and seriously undertake that this ceasefire is going to work. I don't think it's going to work, really speaking. Yes, they will change their tactics. After this, some effect will come. Like in 2019, after Balakot, they changed their tactics and they started only doing small-scale operations. And I'm sure this time also they are going to do that. They'll not go for big hits like in Pahalgam, but they will continue the proxy war at the low level, so that below the threshold. So all I can say is the Indian armed forces have to be fully alert and respond overwhelmingly to Pakistan, because this calibrated, measured responses have not had any impact, and I don't think this ceasefire is being taken anyway seriously by Pakistan. My last point is, look, we have to sort out our security. We have to do it ourselves. We can't be depending upon America or European. They always talk the double talk, and that is what our experience is. At the end of the day, the ball was in Pakistan court, but they have played it wrongly, and I think we have no other option but to respond militarily in a very strong manner, so that Pakistan either mends the ways or it continues to get the punishment and the medicine that we have given so far in last 4 days. Yeshua.
Major General Gigi Dwivedi, thank you very much for joining us. Also, thank you to Gerard, Al, Phil and RVS Mani for being here. Of course, I keep saying this is a fluid situation, and I want that to be clear. Information will continue to come out, and we will bring you all of that as we get it. But for now, that is it. Thank you.